Hey guys, my name is Lexie Smith. I'm a three-time founder, CEO, seasoned publicist and marketer, and your host of the Pitchin and Sippin podcast. This show will give you a front row seat to conversations with top-tier journalists, leading PR pros and marketers, and inspiring brands and entrepreneurs on the rise. I deeply believe that knowledge is power and that learning can actually be fun. So for those who need to craft pitches regularly, whether to reach an audience, land a client, earn media coverage, bylines, and beyond, listen up, take a sip, and get ready for a goldmine of invaluable tips. Marie Icontrera is a two-time TEDx speaker, the CEO and founder of Icontrera Consulting, a digital marketing and thought leader consulting agency, and the author of Amazon bestsellers Social Your Book Launch and Spread Your Idea. She works with thought leaders on leveraging their online presence through social media, podcasts, and speaking. Her speaker clients have been booked by TED and TEDx conferences globally and have spoken on keynote stages across the world. Her media clients have been booked on popular podcasts and radio stations such as The World's Most Amazing People, Entrepreneur on Fire, and many more. I first was introduced to Marie in I don't know what we call them, like a workshop of sorts with Spiral 5, which was founded by Teresa, who has also been on the show. I heard you speak. I knew you had to come on. I'm pretty sure I live pitched you during the event. Anyways, welcome officially to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, you did, and it was awesome. So thank you for that. I really enjoyed my time with Spiral 5.
So where in the world are you?
I am in Manhattan, New York. I live in Hell's Kitchen.
Oh, yeah, I don't know what has been this week, but I feel like every single person I've spoken with, whether it be a current client, a prospect, now this podcast, everyone is in New York. And I'm over here in
Nice.
California, like, hey, it's only 1:15 over here. So I
Love
need
it.
it's like a sign. I need to get over to the East Coast soon. Hell's Kitchen. Okay, outside of work, which we'll get to shortly, what do you like to do for fun?
So in my 5 to 9, as we say, I'm writing a musical right now, and so working on that, and like to do lots of art, go see Broadway shows. I mean, I live in the theater district. And yeah, those I think that's enough hobbies, right?
Wait, you're writing the musical? Like you're
Yeah.
like writing it.
hmm
Oh my God, that's amazing. So do you sing as well, an act? Or you
No,
just
I'm just a writer. And nobody wants to hear me sing.
That's amazing. I mean, I like writing journalistically, but writing for a musical, that's a whole other ballgame. Are you writing the music as well, or is that something you team up with someone on?
I'm writing the music. I have a writing partner, Dory Clark, she's also a business person and in her day job, and so she's writing the book, the story essentially, and the lyrics, and the music is on me.
And I'm like, this is totally triggering a memory of how this is relevant, but we're going to go back into it in your career cliff notes because let's figure out how one who is capable of writing a musical somehow ends up where you are today. So let's rewind time and talk everyone through what came before today.
Yeah, so I have a music degree. I have my master's degree in music composition, and I spent my 20s as a working jazz musician, and I was at the top of my game, but jazz doesn't pay all that much. So I was playing Carnegie Hall and the Blue Note and touring and kind of doing things at the top of my game. My band was winning awards, and I was making $15,000 a year. And in New York, that is very, very little, even, 10-ish years ago. So my friend Dory said, well, you might think about applying some of your entrepreneurial skills to, instead of doing every odd job that you have to survive, maybe you could be a virtual assistant and see what people want from you and see if it works and what have you got to lose. And I didn't have much to lose. And so on my 30th and a half birthday, 8+ years ago, I I quit my odd jobs and I worked with, literally 2 clients to start as a virtual assistant, and over time built something bigger than that because people started coming to me for the same things over time, and then eventually had to hire people, and the rest is history, and here we are.
Okay, so let's go into today. So we went from jazz musician, right, to virtual assistant. Now today you're an author, you have your own firm. So what, I guess you do many things, but what is the core of what you offer your clients today?
So it's 2 things. Digital marketing has been what I've done historically the most, right? Like a lot of LinkedIn, a lot of Instagram, very, very focused on social media, some blog writing. Um, and I work with a lot with B2B people and B2B companies. That tends to be my sweet spot. So lots of coaches, lots of consultants, lots of solopreneurs, PR agents, and things like that. And then the other side of what I do is all around speaking. And for the last 8+ years, I've been working on getting people placed on TEDx stages and writing TEDx talks and basically all things TEDx. And I really love that work. I've been really successful at it. I've placed over 100 people on stages around the world. Um, and more recently, getting into keynotes and developing people's keynotes and having them getting them placed on stages a little bit more broadly, with the model of speaking to sell being the main focus.
Introducing the next big thing you should be sipping on, Sun Moon Rising, the world's first astrology-inspired wine brand. Proudly female-founded, low-intervention, and certified sustainable, Sun Moon Rising is on a mission to redefine the way you engage with wine, delivering a cosmic connection in every glass. They are offering all Pitchin and Sippin listeners 10% off their first purchase. Simply use promo code PITCHIN10, that's PITCHIN10, all caps, at checkout online at sunmoonrisingwine.com. We will put that in the show notes. Cheers! Okay, I'm so excited. So, if everyone's been living under a rock, what is TED? No, I'm just kidding. Everyone listening, you have not been living under a rock, but I do want to take a minute and kind of introduce or reintroduce TED and TEDx, because there's
Mhm.
also a difference that I'd like to talk about.
Yeah, that's great. So I unfortunately use them interchangeably sometimes. But that's just for my own shorthand, but they're very, very different, right? TED is the big event that happens every year in Vancouver. There's TED Women, which happens at the end of every year. So there's basically just 2 or 3 TED proper events. Those are the big TED Talks. They're invite only. It's a $5,000 or $10,000 ticket, kind of depending on what you purchase and what you have access to, that kind of thing. And people like Shonda Rhimes and Monica Lewinsky speak at TED, right? So are your chances of getting on a TED stage, if you're not famous or an inventor or a big, the CEO of ChatGPT or OpenAI or anything like that, um, they're pretty slim. So almost 20 years ago, TED created the TEDx brand, which is an extension of TED. They're independently organized TED style events. And anybody can apply for a license. By the way, I've been an organizer. I did it once just to say I did it. And so what happens is you apply for a license and you hold an event, and it has to follow the TED guidelines. Things like having branding on the stage, things like recording the talks with 2 or 3 cameras and having 3-point lighting, that sort of thing. And so the purpose of the TEDx brand is to create a global platform for people who don't necessarily have one. And that's how people like Brene Brown have become Brene Brown, how people like Simon Sinek and Mel Robbins and others who didn't have the global platform, they amassed millions of views, and they became who they are today because they gave an 18-minute or less talk.
Wow. Okay. First off, thank you for that breakdown because I don't think it's one unless you're deeply entrenched in the
Right.
speaking space to come to some extent you might not realize. So also from the consumer end, it's worth kind of noting. That being said, you have had immense success placing people or helping them get placed on stages, but you've also spoken on them yourself. So I guess which came first, the chicken or the egg? Did you first speak and then you taught people how to do it, or vice versa?
Yeah, so I got into this by accident, and my same friend Dory, she said, "Well, I have a client who I was virtual assisting at the time, so I was basically just doing whatever people would come to me for." And she said, "I have a client who needs to get who wants to get placed on a TEDx stage. Can you help him?" And I was like, "What's a TED Talk?" Basically,
Yeah.
I barely knew what they were. I mean, I had seen them on the internet, and you see them around, but you make assumptions, right? I made the assumption that you needed to be famous, you needed to be, you needed to have done something, um, and she said, "You know what? You're smart. Figure it out." So I, spoke with the client, and I said, "Well, no promises, no guarantees. I'll certainly try my best. I'll figure this out, and we'll see what happens." And by the end of our first month together, he had gotten placed at 2 events. And then more people came to me and they said, "Can you do this for me?" And I said, "No guarantees." And then they got placed. And so I said, "Okay, I got to walk my talk." So I spoke on a couple of stages. I became an organizer, that kind of thing. I really cemented what TEDx is in my brain, and really got to know the platform and the style and everything, and that's how that happened. And once you start getting success with something, more people come, more people want it, that kind of thing. So I really solidified and cemented an offer.
Around that. And we're going to pin that because we're going to go a little bit more into TED, but I have another chicken and egg question first. And I want to take a step back. So, if you're a journalist listening to this who wants to get into speaking, or you're a PR professional whose clients asking for stages, or you're on the entrepreneur wanting to do it yourself, do you start with TEDx? Should you start somewhere else? What's your best advice? And where should TED line up in that strategy?
That's a great question. So, one of the really important distinctions about TEDx is that um, it's one of the only speaking opportunities you'll ever have where you speak globally. Usually when you keynote, when go to a lunch and learn, when you speak to a group of PR professionals, for example, on a webinar, right? You're being really specific, and that's a good thing because your audience is very specific. You're speaking to a room full of entrepreneurs, leaders, teachers, PR professionals, whatever it is. But with TED and TEDx, you're literally speaking to anybody who can see that video. And so when you do your keynote and when you do TEDx, really depends on what your message is and whether it's going to be valuable to be on a global stage and get the global standing and the global branding behind you, or if it's going to be, well, I just want to go to conferences, or I want to speak to, people who can buy my services or my product, or I want to get in front of people who can help me build my following in some way. That's when you do a keynote or a workshop or a lunch and learn.
Okay, so I remember on the Spiral 5 talk, coming from the organizer perspective, you talked about how many applications you received and how many
Hmm.
just did not nail it. Clearly, you've had a track record in the success of cracking the code. So let's get into it. In your opinion, how does one land a TED? Or maybe it's even like, do we have to start with the topic? You tell me where we should go here. If that's the goal, where do we start?
Yeah, so it has to start with a topic and an idea, right? So when I'm placing somebody, first thing we do is we coach. We talk about the idea. TED has guidelines for their TEDx talks, so that's really, really important. Your idea has to match up with the guidelines. That means no political or religious agendas, no pseudoscience, no selling from the stage. There are lots of rules that really focus on that will help you focus your ideas. And you need things like global, actionable, and accessible takeaways. So if you're speaking, and let's say I'm making this up, let's say your idea is around living more mindfully, right? Your takeaways for the audience, what are the ways that the audience that the audience's life is going to be different after they listen to your talk? Your takeaways cannot be, well, go purchase a mindfulness retreat and spend a month off the grid, right? Or go do this yoga certification or whatever the case is. Your takeaways have to literally be something that anybody can do. And so when you're workshopping your idea, when you're thinking about it, whether you do it, go it alone, or you work with somebody, you really have to be thinking about, how do I make my idea the most global that it can be?
What I wish I had written this down now because this was very timely to our talk today, but I was scrolling on LinkedIn yesterday, I think. Yeah, it's Tuesday. So yesterday, and this lady was talking about her TED Talk, and it essentially was why you should read or why reading fiction is good for your business. And I was like,
Mhm.
well, this is freaking timely because I'm literally talking to you the next day. But I thought it was really interesting. And so, I mean, is any topic on at play here? Or like, I'm just trying to think of how did she go about, I looked at her profile, I'm like, she's not even a fiction writer. Like, why is that her topic? And I'd love to just hear, are there any more parameters around, where we can start? Is it like a theme per event? How do we narrow it down?
Yeah, so the great thing about TED is that when a TEDx event has a theme, the theme is broad. So a lot of things will fit under that umbrella. For example, a theme might be Brave New Ending, or Change Your Mind, or a whole new world, or something like that, right? So you look at that and you say, okay, does my talk fit under Change Your Mind? Well, I could have a mindfulness talk, I could have a science talk, I could have a parenthood talk, I could have a business talk, I could, there are so many talks that could fit under that theme. And the great thing about TEDx is that as a consultant, as a coach, as somebody who works with ideas, I get to be a little bit industry agnostic. One of the quickest placements I have ever had was with a sustainable hunting expert who literally, it was high COVID, he traveled to Africa and did his talk remotely in Africa, and recorded it, and it was all about how the government regulated sustainable hunting practices put an end to poaching. And so what he would do is he would go a couple times a year, and the government would say, okay, so we can afford to give you 5 sable and, 3 antelope and 1 lion and whatever it is. This way the land stays at carrying capacity, and all of that meat is then donated to the villages so that nobody goes hungry. So that was like, it was so easy to place that talk. And it was something I never would have thought I would have worked with, because I work with a lot of coaches and consultants. And this person came to me and I was like, I got to look at these. I got to reread the rules and make sure that this is TEDx worthy. And it totally was. And it was one of the most fun engagements I ever had.
Now, once you nail the talk or topic, right? Is there any other tips to keep in mind while going through the application process, or is it pretty straightforward from there?
Yeah, so the 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 thing that I get my clients to prepare is a video script, so like a 2-minute video of you talking about the talk, introducing yourself, showing people what they're going to get when you get on stage, and a blurb. And the thing about applications is that every TEDx can have whatever submission process they want. They don't have to take outside applications. They certainly can. Some of them are going to be as simple as sending a LinkedIn message, or an email, or a Facebook message, or whatever it is. Um, and some are going to have a very detailed Google form, or a submission process. And so you really have to just be prepared for a variety of situations when it comes to the application process. Also, the first one you apply to may not be a good fit for you, even if you think it's a good fit. The organizer really, they have their idea of the day and everything like that. So if you don't get placed on your first or your fifth or your 20th or whatever it is, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your idea. It just means that you haven't found the right event for you.
Okay, so let's talk about some other types of events because you also mentioned, you work with people beyond TED. And a
Mhm.
term you brought up, I'd like to resurface now, is keynote. So I always do, this is an education
Yep.
podcast. What is a keynote for those who might not know the specifics or the distinction?
Yeah, great. So a keynote in its loose, people use that term, I think, rather loosely, to mean a variety of different things. I use keynote as informative speech, right? Or informative session where you're on stage. Maybe it's interactive, maybe it's not. It could be scripted, it could not be, but you're on stage to inform, and your audience is going to be either learning something or they're moved to do something. And that in its broadest form, so a keynote could be 45 minutes, it could be 20 minutes, it could be 90 minutes, it could be a full day workshop, it could be a half day workshop, it could be, a speech and then a training session. Keynotes can take a very, very wide variety of formats.
Did you know that I send out a community newsletter roundup every Tuesday, chocked full of resources, media kit downloads, journalist contact information, event invites, visibility opportunities? Basically, if you're not on the list, hit pause and sign up. It is super simple. All you got to do is go to theprbarinc.com/newsworthy. That link is in the show notes too. Okay, back to the show. Okay, great. So someone wants to be a keynote speaker and they're like, great, you know what? Actually, I want to be a keynote speaker and I want to start getting paid for this.
Yeah.
Now, is that route different than maybe the pitching or application process, which one might assume isn't always paid, or maybe debunk me entirely? What is that? What is the difference there?
So yeah, so that's a great question because there are a couple of models with speak keynoting, right? There's the speak to sell, which you get on stage and you can sell. Sometimes you get paid for that, sometimes you don't. Um, I'll give you an example. In 2021, I spoke at the World Business Executive Coaching Summit. It was virtual. It was, nobody was vaccinated yet. And so we were all in our houses and it was all quarantined. It probably took 90 minutes of my time. And they had a very, very very strict no pitch policy. So you couldn't even give them your website. You couldn't give the attendees your website. If I tell you, my calendar filled up for I think 2 months right after, and
Wow.
my business doubled. And so that's the kind of thing that, like, even if you're not getting paid, which I didn't get paid for that, but I paid dividends in my business in ways that, 3 years later, I still work with clients I met during that time. I've been referred clients from, they say, oh, I heard you 2 years ago on WBEX, like that is the kind of thing that, I really encourage people to be open to speaking for free, because the what could you get paid on stage to get on stage? 5,000, 10,000, maybe 15 if you're a very experienced speaker, more if you're famous in some way. But what did I make from speaking at WBEX? I don't even know. It's definitely in the hundreds of thousands now that I've had recurring clients, I've had people come to me, I've been referred people. So staying open to that is really, really important. And know that speaker fees really, really, really run the gamut. You know, People feel like, oh yeah, I should be getting paid $15,000 for my time. Great. That's awesome. And, you know, you have to be okay with saying, okay, I ask 15, but their budget is 3,500 or 5,000 or 7,500, right? So just be aware of that. My advice to everybody is have a number in mind of what you want to be making, and then be willing to waive your fees for the right opportunity, or because you can speak to sell.
Okay, let's go a little bit deeper on the speak to sell because clearly you know how to do that.
Mhm.
And I think that's a dream that a lot of people would love to integrate because, it's basically besides your time and your expertise, it's not like you're having to pour money into an ad campaign. If what you're giving is your expertise on a stage and you can double your business, like sign me up. Now,
Yeah.
easier said than done. So, I guess, do you have any kind of high level tips on how to create a talk that really does sell? Is it okay if you do a how-to workshop, that's better, or it all comes down to that 2 minute, pitch at the end? I don't know. Any general advice there?
That's a great question. So, two things. One is going to speak to the talk itself, and the other is going to speak to the kind of stage that you get on for this kind of thing. So, first of all, the actual talk you give, you want to be speaking to the pain points of your customers, right? Your potential customers, your potential clients. That's really, really important, and the pain point has to be front and center. It has to be really obvious when you're pitching, and that is the most important thing, because why should anybody listen to you? Well, you're going to solve a problem for them. So really be thinking about what keeps your clients up at night. For me, right, like it's very, very easy for me to get on stage because my pain point is super clear for my clients. They want to be on stages, they want to have bigger platforms. They're not there yet. They don't know how to do it. So it's very, very easy for me to get on stage. You also have a really good pain point because, who doesn't want more PR for their business? That is literally a moneymaker for them. And so if you're getting on stage and talking about that, it's really all about positioning it to say, like, this is the problem I'm going to solve for you. And so that's the first point. The second point is around the kinds of stages that you get on. Now, we think of speaking as this very glamorous profession where you show up and you're in your best outfit, and people take pictures of you on a stage, and you're getting paid, and it's all really exciting. And I'm sure you have the collective you, right? You listening here. You probably have ideas of stages that you want to be on, South by Southwest, or, traffic and conversion, or, the big stages in front of thousands of people. And then there are the boring stages. There are stages like associations, the Association of Chiropractors in Oregon, or the Association of, I don't know, realtors in Florida. They all need your services. They all have the same pain points, and they're hungry. They really need good content. So if you go to speak there, there's way less competition, and you're gonna get good practice, and you're probably gonna get clients out of it.
Okay, I'm from Oregon, so I'm like, how does she know? Because out of all the states
That was totally it was totally random.
that's so funny. Live in California, but from Oregon. I have a
Yeah,
503 area code to this day.
love
I,
it.
I mean, there's just, I could literally hold you hostage because there's so many, you're a wealth of knowledge, and we're going to tell everyone where they can go to tap that knowledge deeper in a minute. But first, I have to ask you my signature show question that I'm deciding to carry with us into season 7. And we talked a lot about pitching on stages. I have to ask what we can find you sipping. So, favorite beverage, it can be, non-alcoholic, alcoholic, whatever you drink.
Yeah, love it. So there is when you come to New York, we'll meet up and we'll have coffee here. My favorite place is 2 blocks away from me. It's called Ground Central, and they
Okay.
have an iced lavender latte that is just perfect. And
Lavender
yeah,
latte.
yeah, lavender lattes are a thing out here, and this one is just like special.
Okay.
So that is what you can catch me sipping. It keeps me going and keeps my brain doing the thing that it needs to do.
sounds lovely. And it's a first for the show. I honestly think the number one beverage that gets listed is water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Water. I'm like, you can say whatever you want. I just
Yeah.
been like the most recurring thing. So this is more fun, an iced lavender latte. Okay, so if someone is going and picking up their iced lavender latte and then they also want to reach out to you, where do we send them?
Well, you can go to my website, Icontrera.com. It's just my last name. You'll be able to find my calendar link on there. You follow me on LinkedIn, find me on Facebook, Instagram, all the socials. Or just, shoot me an email. I'm accessible. I'm always happy to have a conversation. I make my living talking to people, so I'm always happy to just grab 20 minutes of time and have a chat.
That's very generous of you. And thank you again for, coming on the show and me live pitching you, totally putting you on the spot in a room full of publicists. But I couldn't help but bring the conversation to my audience and my stage, right? This is another form of a stage, guys. So podcasts. With that said, I will let you go. Guys, reach out to her, tell her thank you, ask her questions, let her know where you heard her. And until next time on the Pitchin and Sippin podcast. Hey guys, if you are enjoying the Pitchin and Sippin podcast, please do me a huge favor and leave a review wherever you are listening. If you want to connect with me to learn more about the PR Bar Inc., you can do so on Instagram at @thePRBar_Inc., or you can check out my website at theprbarinc.com. Cheers!